shake it off. Overview. Much as foreign nations engage in politics and diplomacy with the Empire, so too do the Eternals of the Six Realms. Most formal contact between the Empire and the Eternals goes through the Archmage of the appropriate realm, but Eternals who have not been marked as enemies can still send their heralds to bring messages on their behalf. Even those who have the enmity of the Conclave, who are designated enemies of the Empire, can sometimes influence Imperial citizens, just as the barbarians beyond the borders can impact the lives of those who should be safe within them. These Eternals love to meddle in Imperial affairs, sometimes via the Imperial Conclave, sometimes directly with Imperial citizens. Sometimes they offer opportunities, agreements that benefit the Empire just as much as the Eternal. Sometimes they present problems, and working out a way to overcome the challenges they create can tax even the most cunning mind. Sanctuary for the Serani. The Conclave has politely rejected Maraud's offer to help the Iron Confederacy wizards. They've accepted Sedogua's offer, but the Eternal requires assistance if he is to help the Serani magicians find sanctuary in the Empire. Prior to the autumn equinox, the Eternal Maraud of the Summer Realm responded to the Summer Archmage's plenipotentiary, not with a parley, but with an ambitious offer to help the magicians of the Iron Confederacy. The Conclave had already made an offer of sanctuary to those Serani wizards who could escape to the Empire, provided that they converted to the Way. During the winter solstice, they confirmed this offer of sanctuary and rescinded the requirement of conversion. They also turned Maraud's offer down, perhaps due to the potential for a major diplomatic incident if Imperial magicians helped the Lord of Summer Stars destroy Axiom Prison. By all accounts, the Fire Mage has metaphorically shrugged and turned his attention elsewhere. He has many more concerns than the well-being of Serani magicians. During the autumn equinox, however, the Brother of Wizards attended a parley called by the Archmage of Night, during which some Imperial magicians prevailed on him to offer his aid to the Serani. The Globbersnotch was interested, but required the Imperial Conclave to formally request him to interfere, as he didn't want to imperil his good relationship with the Empire if anything went wrong. Clarabella Vicente Demetri secured the theoretical support of the Conclave for the Eternals' plan to aid persecuted magicians. The Black Sloth has apparently begun to move on this, reaching out to the scattered Serani magicians and a small number of covens, urging them to seek a sanctum in the Empire. A lot of mana. Sedogua has asked for practical aid from Imperial magicians. Good intentions only get a magician or an Eternal so far, however. During the parley, Sedogua apparently mentioned a sum of crystal mana that would help to ensure that as many innocent magicians as possible made it to Imperial soil. Since the autumn equinox, several of his heralds have visited the magical colleges of the Empire and confirmed that this is the case. At least 100 crystal mana, they say, ideally 200. It seems an awful lot of mana, but according to the heralds of the Father of Bats, the Serani magicians are scattered across the entire Iron Confederacy, and they'll need a lot of help, a lot of magic, if they're to get to safety. He also stresses that he's not particularly dealing with the Hand of Dumon, who tend to have their own resources, but with a combination of minor sorcerers, magical families, random scholars, and similar, all of whom are at risk from the war the Serani are waging with the Hand. The Worm King has suggested several ways that the Conclave might be able to support his schemes, and the Serani magicians. Most straightforward, a declaration of endowment could be used to contribute crystal mana directly to the cause. As long as the declaration specifies, as part of its detail, that the mana is for Sedogua to aid the Iron Confederacy wizards, he swears to distribute it as promised. Secondly, he's come up with a method for individual magicians to help as well. The ritual Tithe of Bats allows a parcel of iridescent gloaming or dragon bone to be sent to the Eternal, and in return he provides them with crystal fire. For the duration of the winter solstice, however, he will instead provide a combination of the resources and the Vs to Serani magicians. Gloaming and Dragonbone can be used for bribes, while Crystal Fire is effective for weaving shrouds and disguises. He estimates that every 20 measures contributed in this way will be the equivalent of 12 mana towards the total required. Third, he mentions that while getting to the Empire's border is difficult, the problem doesn't end there. Actually crossing the border is a challenge. He proposes weaving a magical shroud, a fog, across the southwestern borders of the Empire. It will help anyone fleeing on foot or taking a ship north to actually get to the Empire. He can't do it by himself, or he isn't prepared to risk angering the Conclave, it's not clear which. If Imperial magicians use drawing the penumbral veil on both Segura and Madruga with a magnitude of at least 24, he will exert some of his personal power and weave the shrouds of night magic, creating what he calls a cunning mist that will specifically hide Serrani refugees and confuse Iron Confederacy border guards or Templars pursuing the magicians. It will also allow him to guide fleeing magicians through Feroz, although his heralds won't explain exactly how that'll work. If this is done, it will reduce the amount of mana needed to help the Serrani by 50 crystals. A properly safe haven. The Conclave could use a declaration of concord, urging magicians to help Serrani refugees find homes far from the border and safe from Imperial magistrates and Serrani lawkeepers. Once the Serrani reach the Empire, they'll need help to start new lives without interference from the Iron Confederacy. The Imperial Senate has ratified a treaty with the Iron Confederacy that instructs the magistrates to cooperate with the Serrani Templars in tracking down members of the Hand of Dumon, and Sadogua fears that this will discourage Serrani wizards from seeing the Empire as a safe haven. He also believes that the Serrani lawkeepers will treat any magician who flees the Iron Confederacy as tantamount to a member of the Hand. He has requested that either the Celestial Arch or the Shuttered Lantern use a suitably worded declaration of concord, urging their members to help magicians seeking new lives in the Empire to find safe homes far outside the reach of the Serrani, ideally in Verushka or Wintermark or among the peripatetic Navarre. Knowing that they are going to meet fellow magicians who will protect them will encourage some of the more frightened or conservative magicians and their families to risk expending their personal reserves of power and wealth in attempting the long trek to the Empire. Sadogua believes it will reduce the amount of mana required for a successful project by 25 crystals. There are, of course, already Imperial titles with an interest in helping refugees start a new life in the Empire. The Hand of Guerra, for example, and the Toad King is too politic to say anything about them directly. But reading between the lines, he believes that any such enterprise associated with the Imperial Synod is going to be more interested in making sure people follow the way than that they are safe from the Iron Confederacy persecutors. Sand slips away. Sadogua needs the Empire's aid now if he is to help the magicians of the Iron Confederacy. If less than 100 mana is acquired, only a few Serrani will reach the Empire. If at least 100 mana is acquired, a significant number of Serrani will reach the Empire, but there will be a significant incident. If at least 200 mana is acquired, the Serrani magicians will be able to make their way to the Empire stealthily, meaning no significant incident. If enough Serrani reach the Empire, there will be an opportunity for the Conclave to benefit from their arrival. The Brother of Wizards stresses that the Iron Confederacy magicians need the aid of the Empire now. 3 months have already slipped away, and it is his opinion that if the Conclave doesn't act quickly, the opportunity to get Iron Confederacy wizards to the safety of the Empire will be lost. How much aid the Empire is able to give will directly affect how successful this rescue effort turns out to be. If fewer than 100 mana crystals are acquired, then only a small number of Serrani will reach the Empire. The majority will not be prepared to risk it, and those who do will be as likely to flee to Farad'n as the Empire. There will be no diplomatic incident, but also no noticeable impact on the Empire or the Iron Confederacy at all. If Sadogua manages to secure 100 mana crystals, or their equivalent, then over the next year, a large number of Sorani magicians will quit the Iron Confederacy for the Empire. The exodus will be quite obvious, however, and some of the magicians will be called on to fight their way to safety. As such, there will certainly be a diplomatic incident with the Iron Confederacy. While nobody involved will confirm the Conclave is involved, the Iron Confederacy will view magicians sneaking into the Empire as support for the Hand of Dumont or interference in their affairs. If at least 200 mana is secured, however, then the Exodus will be much more careful and cautious, with a focus on stealth rather than speed. A large number of Sorani magicians will still come to the Empire, but the Iron Confederacy will not know for sure that's where they're going. There'll be no diplomatic incident as long as the ambassador to the Iron Confederacy, or someone of equal standing, does not tell them what's going on. Either way, the majority of these magicians will genuinely be fleeing persecution, many of them with their families. Unfortunately, there's no way to be certain that all of them are entirely innocent. There's a risk that some of them might actually be guilty of the kind of crimes the Sorani priests accuse them of. There's also no doubt that some of the Hand of Dumont will take advantage of the Conclave's compassion to sneak into the Empire and avoid the gaze of magistrates. The Brother of Wizards seems broadly unconcerned about this, obviously. They're magicians, after all. Regardless, those magicians who do reach the Empire will be relieved to find new homes, especially if the Concord Sodogua has suggested is passed. They're not warriors or battle mages. The majority are specialists in magical healing, divination, enchantment. With the urging of the Brother of Wizards and assuming they're able to find actual sanctuary in the Empire, they will share their lore with the Conclave. It is unlikely to be especially potent, and they are unlikely to have access to much magic that requires an entire coven to perform, but there will at least be one opportunity for the Conclave to benefit from the presence of the Sorani refugees in the coming months. Lord of the Crossroads. At the winter solstice, the Heralds of Barrion will be holding court at the tent of the Scarlet Guard in Urizen. The Herald will be in Anvil between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Friday night. They have a challenge scroll for Tarek of Ashenhall. The Heralds are keen to speak to the following people: Edric from Dawn, the other Edric from Dawn, Fiel Ravening this time, Rin Gisgogul, and the Voices of the Unbound Storm. Those who wish to host the Heralds at the spring equinox are encouraged to make an offer. Another season passes, and once more the Heralds of the Iron Duke descend on Anvil to oversee the progress of those who seek a challenge from the Iron Duke. This summit they've chosen to seek the company of the Urazeni in order to conduct their business, where they'll be taking visitors on the Friday evening of the summit between 7 and 9. There is one challenge scroll to be given out to this event, and the Iron Duke calls upon Tarek of Ashenhall to come and receive their quest from Barrion's servants. One new challenger approaches as one comes to the end of their journey. Revel, servant of Barrion, sends missives to Edric of Dawn to come to discuss the matter of their recently requested challenge, while Rin Gisgogul has declared their task complete, and so the Heralds now issue the invitation to a triumphant rewarding. The Voices of the Unbound Storm and Edric Fjellrevening are both also encouraged to seek out the Heralds to assess their progress in their ongoing quests. The Heralds welcome any other who would like to strike up a conversation about a prospective challenge. If for whatever reason the Heralds cannot find everyone they need to on Friday, they will return on Sunday afternoon to attempt to seek out those they need to talk to. If any group would like to host the Lord of Crossroads Heralds at the next event, Revel encourages them to find the Heralds on Friday and discuss the matter. A favour for a Duke. Conjunction. Jarl Roneth of Overgard has recovered their ancestor's sword and needs it returned to Overgard. Barrion has requested the aid of the Weir of Worth in helping challenge the Jarl. The Jotun are likely to be accompanied by a number of heralds of Cathan Canay. The Weir of the Worth is responsible for challenging the Jarl Roneth's group. 2 weeks before the winter solstice, there was a small commotion at the Imperial Regio. The curator, a brash herald of the Lord of Crossroads, arrived and demanded to speak with Irontide Wessex, general of the Summer Storm. Upon finding out that Wessex had sadly died on the battlefield in Zenith, the curator was visually taken aback, but let the civil servant know that Barian was instead asking for a favour from Frith, the Weigher of Worth. Jarl Roneth of Overgard is currently trying to complete a challenge that Barian had set for them. They were tasked to recover their ancestor's sword from Lake Lannispari and return it to Overgard. Having recovered it, they're now on their way back to the border of Skalarn. Barian doesn't consider this to have been a sufficient challenge for the Jarl, so he's asking the Weigher of Worth to put together a group to present a real challenge for Jarl Roneth, as a personal favour to the Iron Duke. Jarl Roneth's force is primarily made up of Ulfur and supported by a number of heralds of the Queen of Ice and Darkness. It would be a tough fight, but the Jotun guard their honour closely. Barian doesn't want anyone's throat being slit when they fall. All the Iron Duke is asking is that the Weigher of Worth finds a way to make this fight as tough as possible for those who've challenged the Iron Duke. If the Weigher of Worth can help, then the Seneschal of the Road has a boon prepared to give them in thanks, even if the Jarl is able to make it back to Overgard with the sword. If the Weigher's champions are able to defeat the Jarl and return the sword to Barian using the Operate Portal spell at the Imperial Regio, then the Weigher of Worth will receive an item of worth as well as the boon. Calidus and Bartemius. Bartemius of Zenith Ascendant has been invited to a meeting organised by Calidus. The chamber will open at midnight on Friday. A herald of Calidus will be in the Hall of Worlds to accompany them to the meeting. Bartemius is invited to bring no more than 2 additional guests. Shortly before the winter solstice, a herald of the Prince of the Argent Tontine, named Florin of the Many Coins, arrived in a flurry of silks at the Anvil Regio. They delivered an invitation to the hub at Anvil, which was initially mistaken for an additional parley. It appears to be for Bartemius of Zenith Ascendant, custodian of the great mine of Briante, rather than the Archmage of Autumn. Florin gives no indication as to why the collector of relics, artefacts and curios might have arranged such a meeting, nor who it's with. They will only say that the sovereign lord of the City of Chains expects Bartemius and up to 2 guests to be in the Hall of Worlds at midnight on Friday. Torbjorn, Saphir and Wise Rangara. Torbjorn Reidriksson is invited to meet with a herald of Wise Rangara. A herald of Wise Rangara will be in the Hall of Worlds to accompany Torbjorn at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Another Eternal has laid out an invitation for the winter solstice. A feathered and beaked herald of Wise Rangara has fluttered and squawked its way to Anvil to announce that Grandmother Winter wishes to meet with one Torbjorn Reidriksson, the sole beneficiary of the boon she extended to the summer children a year ago. The meeting is for Torbjorn alone, but Wise Rangara asks, if they can, that they bring Safé du Circle of Dawn along, should they be in attendance. There seems to be some confusion around this because the herald mentions that Safé du Circle may well be dead, but if they have any sense they'll turn up to the Hall of Worlds and meet Torbjorn there before they go to see Wise Rangara. Safé is to remain silent until Wise Rangara's business with Torbjorn is complete. Torbjorn Radriksson may bring one other with them if they wish, provided the other is also aware that they are not allowed to speak during the meeting, save with Redriksson's approval, much the same as if this were a formal parley and Torbjorn were the Archmage. The herald gives little context for the meeting, save that there will be someone ready to meet them at the Hall of Worlds at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and that they might end up being entangled with some foolishness going on in Dawn after the meeting concludes. Swan's polite request. The Eternal Yenrith has sent a messenger to the Archmage of Day to consider sending her a plenipotentiary at some point in the coming year. Yenrith is currently considered an enemy of the Empire. During the winter solstice 3 years ago, Skywise Gralka, acting as proxy for then Archmage of Day, Gantius Delanotte de Savos, declared that Yenrith was an enemy of the Empire. The Conclave concurred. Since then, there's been little contact from the Eternal. As such, it's understandable that when a herald wrapped in a robe of white feathers appears in the Hall of Worlds, claiming to speak on behalf of Yenrith, there is some consternation. Calling themselves Terme, the herald politely explains that they're here with a message from the Mistress of Music and Mathematics for the magicians of the Empire, but that their mistress does not wish to intrude unnecessarily. Their message is quite straightforward. It has been some time since Yenrith has spoken with an Imperial magician, and she requests that, at some point in the coming year, the Archmage of Day consider extending an offer of parley to her. The herald does not expand on this request, but, shortly before departing the Hall of Worlds, mentions that they advise the Archmage to speak to their mistress before agreeing to meet with any unfamiliar Eternals of the Realm of Day that might attempt to make contact in the coming months. Strategic invitation. Zakalwe is sending a lieutenant to secure 5 heralds for a contest at the spring equinox. The herald Agon will be visiting Dawn at 4 p.m. on Saturday evening. The Eternal Zakalwe is, by all accounts, pleased with his relationship with the Empire. He has assisted Imperial heroes against the Druge and continues to watch their efforts on both the eastern and western fronts with interest. During the winter solstice, he will be sending his trusted lieutenant, Agon, to Dawn to present an invitation to the warriors and strategists there. At the spring equinox, Agon will oversee a game of strategy, if Dawn is interested. Zakalwe has sponsored such games before, combining elements of board game with historical recreation of past military campaigns. This time, the historical conflict he wishes to explore will be inspired by the final battles of Empress Brannon and her failed attempt to conquer the Barons. Obviously, rather than a strict historical recreation, the game will involve an amount of abstraction. Zakalwe is eager to see what modern Dornish strategists would make of a campaign involving some of the challenges Brannon and her supporters faced in 257 YE. During the solstice, Agon is mostly interested in meeting with the people of Dawn and helping them to select a team of 5 to participate in the challenge at the spring equinox. He's also interested in hearing about the challenges that the modern Dornish are encountering in their own war of conquest in the Barrens. He is expected to arrive at the Dornish camp at around 4 in the afternoon on Saturday. Bad Law and Black Drops. A number of additional rituals relating to the Black Drop have been added to Urizen lore. Every one of the rituals in the Black Drop call on the power of agreement. The last surviving member of the Black Drop Society appears to have been murdered in Karaman. The winter ritual, Treacher's Quill, was added to Lurizen Ore just 3 days before the autumn equinox 384 YE. Treacher's Quill, part of the collective life's work of the Chalder of the Black Drop, was the first of the rituals to become available to Urizen ritualists. Now just 3 days before the winter solstice, another 5 rituals from Ceremonies of the Black Drop Society have become part of Urizen lore. The winter rituals, the Crimson Feast, Loosen the Shackles, Mark of Agreement, Thirst of the Devourer, and Unleash the Beasts Within, are all available to be mastered, although, given that Agreement is currently under enmity, they are quite illegal to perform. Apparently, the attendants of the Great Library are deeply uncomfortable with these rituals and their presence among Urizen lore, more due to their illegal nature than any sentimental concerns about their origin. They were apparently all submitted at the same time as Treacher's Quill, but Falaron itself intervened to delay their appearance in lore while it pondered how best to respond. In the end, they've decided to do the only thing they can: present the rituals to Urizen as part of their lore agreed when Urizen lore was created. The Celestial Library does not enjoy causing trouble for its Urizeni allies, but the gift of knowledge is available to every Imperial citizen. It cannot pick and choose who can contribute rituals via the ritual. If it is any consolation, there appear to be no further rituals waiting to enter Urizen lore relating to the Black Drop. On the subject of the Black Drop, the body of Jadea Wataka de Tasato Mestra, believed to be the last remaining charter of the Black Drop, has been found in the Gecko's Nest, a shithole of a parador in the Jade Range, Karaman. She died during the autumn equinox, during or immediately after a meeting with 3 strangers, none of them freeborn. The night barman was present for a part of the meeting, but didn't hear what was discussed. Jadea dismissed him, and when he returned half an hour later, she was dead. He reports that the visitors were a mixed assortment, a Marcher, an Avari, and an Urazeni, although the barman believes the Marcher left before he did. It seems the killers came via the Sentinel Gate from Anvil and left the same way. The death was reported to the magistrates at Anvil, who dealt with it accordingly. A sorry end to a sorry tale, but hopefully it closes the page on this chapter in the Empire's history.